He mocked his pregnant wife in front of his mistress, until she quietly bought out his entire company. "You thought I was just your wife, but I've always been your biggest threat." How did a humiliated, heartbroken woman turn betrayal into power and leave a millionaire CEO speechless in his own boardroom? Everyone thought Samantha was just a stay-at-home wife, until she exposed his lies, uncovered corporate fraud, and flipped the entire empire. But what made her strike back? And why did the world cheer her on? Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel, and your support means the world to us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a twist. Andrew Whitmore was the embodiment of success, or at least that was what every glowing article and social media post suggested. At just 35 years old, he had amassed a personal fortune in technology, particularly in the realm of data analytics. The glossy business magazines featured his handsome, clean-shaven face, sharp suits, and broad smile. Journalists penned glowing profiles about how Andrew revolutionized predictive data for global businesses. They praised his philanthropic gestures, particularly his annual donation to cancer research organizations, always carefully photographed for maximum publicity. To outsiders, Andrew's personal life seemed just as perfect. He lived in an opulent penthouse perched high above Manhattan with his beautiful wife, Samantha. They had been college sweethearts at Princeton, he a clever business major, and she an eloquent writer in the English literature department. Their wedding had been a grand affair at a villa in Tuscany, with Samantha's luminous smile gracing the covers of society magazines that had caught wind of the spectacle. Everyone had expected them to remain the golden couple, forging a union of love and respect. Little did anyone suspect that beneath those layers of polished marble, sensational news articles, and Instagram-perfect snapshots, there was a chasm that had grown wider by the day. Although Samantha was pregnant, 8 weeks along, Andrew found her more of an inconvenience than a blessing. Too often, he found reasons to stay at the office until well past midnight, or slip into business dinners that did not appear on official calendars. To those who cared to look closer, he was drifting away from Samantha, seemingly oblivious to her growing anxieties. If Samantha was worried about her husband's detachment, she kept it locked behind her patient smile and calm composure. With her soft-spoken voice and incisive mind, she was one of those rare individuals who exuded warmth even in the bleakest moments. After all, Andrew was not just her husband, he was her first love. She comforted herself with memories of simpler times, when Andrew brought her coffee late at night in the library while she worked on her poetry assignments, and he on his business proposals. In truth, a faint hope remained in her heart, that once he heard the sound of their baby's heartbeat, once he held their child in his arms, he would emerge from whatever emotional darkness was gripping him. She hoped that the promise of fatherhood could bridge the distance between them. After all, what was a better reason to unite than a child? Samantha was restless that night. Her pregnancy made her uncomfortable, but the emotional turmoil under their roof was far worse. Andrew had just sent her a message saying he would be home very late, another business dinner, no doubt with potential investors. Over the past few months, the frequency of these dinners had escalated alarmingly. Unable to sleep, Samantha wandered into his private study. It was a room she seldom entered, dominated by a large mahogany desk and a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf filled with business books, philosophy texts, and a few first-edition novels he had gifted her long ago. The only source of light was a desk lamp, which cast a golden glow across Andrew's meticulously neat workspace. As she slid into the leather chair, she found a stack of documents. Usually, Andrew kept his files locked away. He was particular about confidentiality. But tonight, he must have been in a hurry. Samantha's eyes drifted to the top sheet. It was from a high-end interior design firm, referencing a penthouse renovation plan. Curiosity piqued, she skimmed the document. It detailed expansions and structural changes to a penthouse in a building she didn't recognize. The occupant's name on the invoice was Andrew Whitmore, but the address was not their existing penthouse. This was a second location, one Samantha had never known about. A chill ran through her. She flipped to the next page, finding an itemized list of design requests that revolved around a bedroom suite. living area, and some mention of a new wine cellar. Why would Andrew be commissioning a separate penthouse when they already lived in a lavish home? Panic flickered across her heart. Could it be a secret property for corporate retreats? For entertaining clients? Or was it something more personal, something that spelled betrayal? With trembling hands, she put the documents back in the exact order she had found them. She swallowed the anxiety and told herself she needed more proof before jumping to conclusions. But deep in her gut, she already knew. Andrew's distant behavior, the frequent business dinners, and now a second penthouse. It pointed to a haunting reality. The man she loved might be hiding a mistress. The following week, Andrew insisted they host a lavish cocktail party at the prestigious Whitmore Tower, his company's towering headquarters in Midtown. The event's purpose was to celebrate yet another partnership with a major technology conglomerate. Samantha loathed the facade of it all, but attendance, she was told, was mandatory for her as the supportive spouse. The top floor of Whitmore Tower featured a glass-walled conference area and an open terrace that offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline. That night, it was transformed into a glitzy soiree with glittering chandeliers suspended from frames, waiters wearing crisp suits and bow ties, and string music courtesy of a live quartet. Senior executives mingled with wealthy investors, journalists, and a sprinkling of celebrities. Samantha even noticed, among the crowd, the philanthropic giant Bill Gates discussing software synergy with a small group. Nearby, a few well-known fashion designers were pointing out the floor's custom fixtures. Samantha arrived in a flowing pastel blue gown, which carefully concealed her growing baby bump. She tried to maintain a smile, greeting the guests with gentle warmth. For a moment, she tried to imagine it was years ago, back at a simpler time when Andrew confided everything in her. But the illusion shattered the moment she saw Andrew step out of the elevator. Hanging onto his arm was a stunning woman with raven black hair, wearing a silver dress that clung to her hourglass figure. Samantha froze, her heart pounding so loudly she could hardly hear the gentle hum of the string quartet. She recognized the woman instantly. Nicole Reeves. Nicole was a rising star at a rival data tech firm, known as a cunning negotiator, and rumored to have a list of wealthy patrons in her pocket. A swirl of questions overloaded Samantha's thoughts. Was Nicole the reason for Andrew's distant behavior? Was she the occupant of the new penthouse Andrew was renovating? Andrew approached Samantha with a bright, artificial grin. "There you are," he said, barely hugging his wife. "You look nice." Nicole gave Samantha a cordial nod, though her eyes glimmered with triumph as though staking a claim. "Hello, Mrs. Whitmore. I've heard a lot about you." "All good things, I'm sure," Samantha replied, forcing a polite smile even as her heart thundered. There was no wedding ring on Nicole's slender finger, which didn't surprise Samantha. What did surprise her, though, was the next move Andrew made. He placed a hand around Nicole's waist and introduced her to the onlooking group of corporate bigwigs as his closest business associate. "She's been instrumental in bridging the gap between us and the biggest data warehousing corporations in Europe," Andrew boasted, ignoring the rising tension in Samantha's posture. "Couldn't have executed our latest contracts without her insight." The group nodded and smiled politely, though a few eyed Samantha with pity or discomfort. Samantha swallowed her mortification, trying to maintain her composure in front of the crowd. She was used to Andrew dismissing her professional ideas. He had never really believed in her intelligence, focusing instead on her role as a trophy wife. But to fawn over Nicole in her presence was humiliating. After that public display, Andrew's confidence soared further. Throughout the evening, he placed Nicole at the center of every conversation. Photographers snapped pictures of them together, ignoring Samantha, who stood awkwardly to the side. If anyone asked about Samantha's condition, some noticing a slight swell in her belly, Andrew brushed off the questions with vague comments about "no big news yet" or "just a personal matter." By the event's end, Samantha felt drained of all dignity. She realized that Andrew was not merely drifting away, but showcasing his betrayal in front of everyone. That night, Samantha returned to their penthouse ahead of Andrew. She had left the party early under the pretense of not feeling well. The moment she stepped off the private elevator, tears welled up, blurring her vision of the pristine marble flooring. A wave of loneliness enveloped her. Never in her life had she felt so abandoned. She kicked off her heels and went straight to the bedroom, letting her tears flow freely. She was 2 months pregnant. The baby was beginning to change her body in delicate, beautiful ways that she cherished. Yet Andrew seemed entirely indifferent. Her mind replayed the humiliating moment when he introduced Nicole to the top executives and let them assume she was Andrew's crucial partner, while Samantha was relegated to the background as a pretty accessory. An hour later, Andrew sauntered in, reeking of champagne. Samantha heard him from the bedroom, but she did not move. She listened as he threw his jacket on the sofa, rummaged through the refrigerator for bottled water, then ambled into the room. "You left early," he observed. "It was an important event for me, Sam. I would have preferred you stayed until the end." She looked up at him with puffy eyes. "I wasn't feeling well. I told you that." Andrew sighed. "Is this about Nicole?" The mere mention of that woman's name sparked an ache in Samantha's chest. "I'm not sure what you want me to say, Andrew. You paraded her in front of everyone like some sort of partner. If she's just a friend, then why the show?" He rolled his eyes. "Business strategy, Samantha. You wouldn't understand. Nicole is a key figure in my expansion plan. I thought you wanted me to succeed." "At the cost of humiliating me?" she retorted, trying to hold back tears. He gave a half laugh, half scoff. "Stop being so dramatic. You're pregnant, hormones raging. But I'm asking you to keep it under control, at least publicly." She was rendered speechless. Her husband's disregard hurt more profoundly than any argument they had had in the past. Andrew pinched the bridge of his nose and exhaled. "Look, I'm not in the mood for a fight. I've got a conference call with investors in Tokyo in a few hours. Can we just call it a night?" A wave of exhaustion slammed into her. Arguing felt futile. He was so far removed from her, so absorbed in his pride and illusions, that bridging the gap seemed impossible. She nodded, breath shuddering, and turned over in bed. That night, as Andrew typed away on his laptop under the dim bedside lamp, Samantha silently cried herself to sleep. Things continued in that miserable limbo for several more weeks. Andrew's nights away from home grew more frequent. Samantha occasionally heard rumors about him and Nicole attending exclusive galas, or seen dining at the city's newest upscale restaurants. Whenever Samantha tried to confront Andrew, he shot her down with an exasperated sigh and a cliched line about just doing business. One spring afternoon, Samantha found herself alone in a cafe on the Upper East Side, having tea with her best friend, Juliet Browning. Juliet had been Samantha's confidant since their days at Princeton, and she was one of the few people Samantha felt safe enough to share her heartbreak with. "You need to do something, Sam," Juliet pleaded, leaning forward, her long blonde hair falling over one shoulder. "Andrew's not the man you married. He's changed. You can't let him continue to walk all over you, especially now that you're expecting a child." Samantha nodded, gazing at the swirl of milk in her Earl Grey. "I know. I keep hoping he'll change back, you know? That maybe he'll remember who he used to be." Juliet's expression softened. "You're so strong. But you need to channel that strength in a way that protects you and your baby. Don't let him keep gaslighting you." Samantha hesitated. She had always hoped to solve the problem by appealing to Andrew's sense of decency. But the events of recent weeks made her wonder if that sense of decency still existed in him at all. Then, Juliet dropped a bombshell. "I've heard rumors that he's using company resources to bankroll Nicole's personal projects. There's talk about a hush-hush research lab or startup that's being partially funded by Whitmore Incorporated. My friend at the finance firm saw some suspicious transfers. If he's mixing personal affairs with corporate business, it could be trouble." Samantha's heart pounded. She recalled Andrew's hush-hush property acquisition. Could he be financing Nicole's entire lifestyle? If so, that was more than mere infidelity. He was risking the integrity of the company. Juliet reached out and placed a hand on Samantha's. "I'm telling you this so you can be prepared. If the board or shareholders find out about financial improprieties, Andrew could lose everything. Maybe you need to take steps to protect your share. Maybe you should consult a lawyer. Samantha absorbed this, feeling uncertain but strangely empowered. Yes, Andrew was the majority shareholder and the face of Whitmore Incorporated. But Samantha held a significant minority stake, gifted to her soon after they married. He had insisted at the time it was a grand, romantic gesture, a way of saying that her future would always be tied with his. She left the cafe determined to do something, but she did not yet know what. One evening, Andrew demanded that Samantha accompany him to a so-called intimate dinner. This time, it was at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Soho, a place lit with low romantic lighting and known for its exquisite courses. Samantha had turned 3 months pregnant and was finally starting to show. She reluctantly agreed, partly out of a sense of duty, partly hoping that this dinner might be a chance to reconnect. However, upon arriving, she noticed that the reservation was for a table of 3, Andrew, Samantha, and Nicole. Samantha's heart sank. She wanted to run from that place, but Andrew gave her one of those just-play-along stares. She could do little but follow as the maitre d' led them to a private alcove surrounded by glass walls and subtle candlelight. They sat, and awkward small talk followed. Nicole brought up her latest projects, praising Andrew for his unbelievable generosity and incredible guidance. Samantha's stomach churned, especially when she noticed that Andrew seemed almost mesmerized by Nicole's presence, barely acknowledging Samantha's attempts to join the conversation. At one point, Nicole excused herself to answer a phone call. Samantha seized the opportunity. "Andrew, this is torture. Why did you bring me here with her?" she whispered. "This isn't normal." He shrugged. "I wanted to avoid rumors. People were whispering that you and I don't appear together often. So, I thought this would show everyone that we can all coexist. Besides, I need Nicole for this new venture. She's brilliant, Sam. Stop being so stubborn." "How can you expect me to coexist with your mistress?" she demanded in a hushed voice, tears gathering in her eyes. The look Andrew gave her was colder than ice. "Watch your tone. This is business. She's not—" But he never finished his sentence. Nicole returned to the table, and Andrew pasted on a smile as though nothing had happened. Then, in the middle of dinner, Nicole spoke plainly. "Andrew, darling, maybe we can finally tell Samantha the news. I'm so excited about it." Samantha felt her heartbeat pound in her ears. "Tell me what?" she demanded, looking between them. Andrew cleared his throat. "Samantha, Nicole and I have decided to open a specialized analytics lab in Silicon Valley. I'm investing heavily. She'll be at the helm." Samantha stared, mouth dry. Why are you telling me this?" Nicole placed a hand on Andrew's forearm. "He wanted your input, of course. After all, you're part of the Whitmore family business, right?" Andrew quickly jumped in. "Nicole's our best shot at expanding into specialized healthcare analytics. She's basically going to run the entire show and we stand to make a fortune. Isn't that great news?" Samantha placed a hand on her belly. She felt a sudden wave of protectiveness, not just for herself, but for her unborn child. The humiliations, the late nights, the open disregard. She could handle that pain, or at least endure it. But she refused to let Andrew jeopardize everything, including the child's future, for this mistress's grand ambitions. The evening ended with Andrew toasting Nicole's brilliance in front of other diners who cast them curious glances. The second they returned to the penthouse, Samantha locked herself in the bedroom and cried for hours, something she rarely allowed herself to do. In the following days, Samantha could not shake the ominous feeling that Andrew was pushing Whitmore Incorporated into murky waters. With Nicole whispering ideas into his ear, he was funneling funds and resources into ventures that appeared to be high risk, perhaps worse, an outright conflict of interest. Andrew's mania for success, for outdoing his rivals, seemed to have overtaken any moral compass he once possessed. At her next prenatal checkup, Samantha found herself confiding her anxieties to Dr. Hansen, a gentle older man who had become her trusted physician. After finishing her ultrasound, Dr. Hansen gave her a concerned look. "Stress is not good for you or the baby," he said softly. "Is there someone you can talk to? Someone who can help you with whatever you're going through?" She pressed her lips together. "I'm working on it," she said, her voice trembling. Dr. Hansen nodded sympathetically. "Don't let yourself be isolated, Samantha. You need support." Samantha left the clinic that day with a renewed vow. She would get support for herself and for her baby. She called Juliet again, who reiterated that Samantha should reach out to a corporate attorney. After all, Samantha still held a 10% stake in Whitmore Incorporated, no small sum. If Andrew truly was mismanaging funds or using the company to finance Nicole's personal ventures, Samantha needed to know exactly what her rights were. That afternoon, Samantha met with an attorney named Thomas Caldwell in a discreet downtown office. He was a friend of Juliet's and had a reputation for tackling complex corporate lawsuits. Samantha poured out her story, describing her concerns about Andrew's behavior and the potential misuse of company assets. Caldwell, a patient listener, waited until she finished. "You've done the right thing by coming to me," he said. "If Andrew is commingling personal finances with corporate money, especially if he's taking on risky ventures at the expense of shareholder interests, there could be grounds to hold him accountable, and that includes an option for you to buy more shares if the board or certain investors sense a need for new leadership." Samantha's eyes widened. "I thought Andrew essentially controlled the company. That's what he always said." "He's the majority shareholder, but majority is not absolute, especially if misconduct is involved," Caldwell explained. "In certain situations, large minority shareholders or the board can force the issue, particularly if they fear the company is in danger." That conversation planted a seed in Samantha's mind. She left Caldwell's office with trembling hands and a heart brimming with both fear and unexpected hope. For the first time, she saw a path forward, a way to protect the company from Andrew's recklessness, to secure a stable future for herself and her unborn child. But the cost would be great. It would force her to stand against the man she once loved with every fiber of her being. Over the next month, Samantha quietly gathered information. She spoke discreetly to the CFO of Whitmore Incorporated, an older gentleman named Maurice Fisher, who had known Andrew since the early days of the company. Over coffee in a small bistro away from prying eyes, she pressed him on whether he had concerns about the finances. Fisher was cautious, but eventually confided, "I've seen large sums allocated toward a new subsidiary formed under Nicole's name. Andrew is pushing these deals through without the usual oversight. I worry that if something goes wrong, the entire company could suffer." Samantha also consulted with the board's most experienced member, a steely-eyed woman named Camilla Royce, who was well respected in the corporate world. After some convincing, Camilla acknowledged that Andrew's behavior had raised red flags. "We're meeting next month to discuss the new direction. If Andrew can't provide a clear plan, or if we see the risk is too high, the board might consider removing him from the CEO position, but only if there's a viable alternative." A viable alternative. Samantha knew that meant a new leader who had the trust of shareholders. She wasn't naive. She was pregnant, had no formal corporate leadership background, and had always stayed behind the scenes. But was there someone else? Or could she, despite all odds, step into that role, if only to protect the business from Andrew and Nicole's manipulations? The seed of possibility became a plan. Under Caldwell's guidance, Samantha began buying small amounts of Whitmore Incorporated stock on the open market, using money from an inheritance she had received from her late grandmother. She did it stealthily, through various brokerage accounts, so no one would suspect she was amassing a larger stake. At night, she studied the company's financial statements, scouring them for any sign of Andrew's questionable maneuvers. She wanted to be armed with facts when the time came to confront him, and possibly the entire board. One fateful weekend, Andrew decided to host a party at his newly renovated penthouse, the one Samantha had discovered months ago. He framed it as a corporate retreat for upper-level executives, but Samantha suspected it was more an opportunity to flaunt his wealth and further entrench Nicole as a key player. For appearances, Andrew invited Samantha along, likely to maintain the charade that their marriage was stable. Samantha arrived at the building, a sleek high-rise in Tribeca, and took the elevator to the top floor. She emerged into an opulent penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows revealing panoramic views of the Hudson River. Plush furnishings and modern art decorated every corner. In the center of the living area was Andrew, laughing loudly, while Nicole clung to his arm, practically glowing with satisfaction. Executives and their spouses milled around, sipping champagne and sampling gourmet hors d'oeuvres. The mood was celebratory. Samantha felt a coil of anger tighten in her stomach as she observed Andrew introducing Nicole as the visionary behind a new wave of expansions. She quietly slipped onto a balcony to catch her breath. The air outside was crisp, a welcome relief from the tension swirling indoors. She reminded herself that in a matter of days, the board meeting would occur. She had orchestrated everything carefully, with Caldwell's help. If all went as planned, she would have the power to challenge Andrew's leadership. Suddenly, the glass door slid open and Andrew stepped out, a smug grin on his face. "Hiding, are we?" he teased, swirling a glass of whiskey. Samantha stared at the city lights. "Just getting some fresh air." "Nothing to be upset about, Sam," he said, stepping closer. "If you were a little more supportive, maybe you'd enjoy these parties." She resisted the urge to retort, but Andrew's next words stabbed her deeper than any previous insult. "Besides," he continued, "once you have the baby, I'm sure you'll have more on your plate. Mommy duties. Nicole can help me run the business. That's what you wanted, right? To be a mother?" His casual dismissal of her ambitions, and even her role as co-owner of the company felt like a final blow. A wave of rage and hurt washed over her, but she managed to keep her voice steady. "You really think that's all I can do?" Andrew took a sip of his drink. "Well, your talents lie elsewhere. We have different skill sets. Let's not kid ourselves. Leave the real business to those of us with the drive." In that moment, Samantha realized there was nothing left of the man she once fell in love with. He was consumed by ego, incapable of seeing anyone's worth but his own. She gave him a long, measured look, then brushed past him to leave. As she walked through the penthouse, she overheard Andrew mocking her to an executive's wife. "Samantha's so hormonal these days, always whining. She'll be a great mother. But in business matters, she's clueless." He laughed with that arrogant tone that had become so familiar, while Nicole stood at his side smirking. Humiliated and shaking with fury, Samantha left the party. She did not look back. The day of the board meeting dawned gray and rainy, as though the city itself sensed the tension in the air. Samantha dressed in a tailored black skirt suit that concealed her now 5-month bump as much as possible. She wore her hair pulled back, her makeup subtle yet professional. Looking at herself in the mirror, she felt an unaccustomed surge of confidence. She was not the meek, mild Samantha that Andrew believed he could walk over. Today, she was a woman on a mission to protect her family, her unborn child, and everything she had once believed Whitmore Incorporated could stand for. The boardroom was a palatial space on the 57th floor of Whitmore Tower, with a long mahogany table and leather chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a dramatic view of Manhattan's skyline, half shrouded by mist and drizzle. As Samantha entered, she exchanged determined nods with Caldwell, who had come as her legal advisor. Andrew, seated at the head of the table, appeared taken aback by her presence. Nicole was there too, seated beside him, wearing a crisp white blazer. The rest of the board members, Camilla Royce, Morris Fisher, and 4 others, shuffled in, along with a few senior executives. Andrew cleared his throat. "I'd like to begin by thanking everyone for attending. Today's agenda is to discuss the new expansions into specialized healthcare analytics, spearheaded by Nicole Reeves. I trust you've all read the proposals." Murmurs of acknowledgement came from around the table. He glanced at Nicole, who launched into a rehearsed pitch about exponential growth, data analytics breakthroughs, and synergy with global medical institutions. The slides that flashed on the screen were impressive, showcasing potential earnings that soared beyond imagination. Samantha watched the board members react, some looking intrigued, others skeptical. Then came the moment for questions. Camilla Royce spoke up. "Thank you, Miss Reeves. The figures are impressive. However, certain aspects of the funding remain unclear. We'd like to see a breakdown of the source of these funds. How much is being diverted from Whitmore Incorporated's existing lines of business? Nicole faltered slightly. Andrew jumped in with a confident grin. Don't worry, Camilla. We have the reserves for this. Our financials are strong. Camilla's gaze sharpened. I'd like specifics. Andrew drummed his fingers on the table. Well, specifics. We have some lines of credit, private investments, that sort of thing. We're still finalizing the details. A ripple of discomfort traveled around the room. Samantha caught Caldwell's eye. It was time. She cleared her throat. I have a question, she said calmly. Andrew's face hardened. Of course, Samantha. Go ahead. She stood, her voice steady as she looked each board member in the eye. I'd like to address concerns about the nature of these investments, specifically whether company funds, belonging to shareholders, are being used to bankroll Miss Reeves's personal research facility. Nicole's eyes flared. Excuse me? That's a baseless accusation. Samantha withdrew a folder from her briefcase and handed copies around. These documents show a series of wire transfers from Whitmore Incorporated to an LLC that Miss Reeves set up, all authorized by Andrew Whitmore. The amounts are far beyond typical preliminary investments, and they bypass standard oversight procedures. Andrew shot to his feet. What is this? Camilla and other board members leaned forward, scanning the documents. Their expressions grew graver by the moment. This is ridiculous, Andrew exclaimed. Samantha, where did you even get this data? Maurice Fisher, the CFO, cleared his throat. I can confirm that these transfers exist. They were logged as partnership funds, but they weren't itemized in the official record. I was told they were for preliminary expansion, Samantha continued calmly. Additionally, there is evidence that Andrew used corporate accounts to fund the renovation of a luxury penthouse which Miss Reeves occupies. These expenses are disguised under client entertainment, but clearly violate corporate policy. The tension in the room skyrocketed. Nicole tried to speak, but was drowned out by the sudden flurry of questions from the board. Andrew was livid, practically shaking. This is a smear campaign, he yelled, pointing an accusing finger at Samantha. My wife, my own wife, is trying to undermine me. But the board members were no longer focusing on Samantha's motives. They were poring over the evidence, grave concern etched on their faces. Camilla Royce looked up. Andrew, if any of this is true, it's a gross mismanagement of company resources. Shareholders would be outraged. Andrew's face reddened. I am the majority shareholder. I can use the funds as I see fit. Calmly, Samantha spoke again. You were the majority shareholder, Andrew. However, in the past few months, I've increased my stake to 20%. With the support of other concerned parties collectively, we hold enough shares to force a leadership vote. Gasps reverberated around the table. Andrew stared at her, stunned. You bought more shares behind my back? Samantha set her shoulders. Yes. After seeing your reckless conduct, I felt it necessary to protect the company and everyone else who has a stake in it. That includes me and our unborn child. Nicole Reeves glared, her face twisting in fury, but she had no retort. Camilla cleared her throat. I call for an immediate vote on Andrew Whitmore's position as CEO, pending an internal investigation into these allegations. In the interim, we propose an acting CEO to stabilize the company. Samantha's heart pounded. This was it, the moment of truth. She glanced around, seeing nods of agreement from the board. Andrew tried to argue, but they held a formal vote. The board voted unanimously to suspend Andrew as CEO, pending the results of a thorough audit. Stunned silence followed. Samantha quietly slipped back into her seat, feeling a wave of emotional relief mingled with sorrow. She had just orchestrated the downfall of the man she once loved. Andrew stared across the table, seething with betrayal and humiliation. As the meeting concluded, he stormed out, with Nicole trailing behind him, her face a mask of panic. In the days that followed, the company's legal team and external auditors began a deep dive into Andrew's finances. They discovered more than enough irregularities to justify the board's actions. The revelations made headlines. CEO Andrew Whitmore, under investigation for misuse of company funds. Whitmore Incorporated stock rebounds after new leadership. And so on. Samantha, meanwhile, found herself in a whirlwind. The board had asked her to serve as interim CEO, or at least as a figurehead with the help of a strong advisory team, until they could stabilize the company. Despite her initial reluctance, she was still pregnant and had little executive experience. She accepted, understanding she was the best person to protect the company from further harm. Andrew refused all communications with her. He retreated to the penthouse, though by now the board had frozen the corporate accounts paying for it. Gossip columns speculated about the status of his relationship with Nicole. Some sources claimed they had parted ways. Others said they were still in cahoots. Samantha tried not to pay attention. She had more pressing matters at hand. Every day she spent in the office was a challenge. She had to prove herself, even though her pregnancy was becoming more apparent with each passing week. She had to navigate complex contracts, reassure jittery investors, and stabilize morale among employees who had lost faith in their leader. Yet, slowly, Samantha found her footing. With Camilla Royce's mentorship and Caldwell's legal acumen, she began to restructure the company. She cut off the unvetted expansions initiated under Nicole's watch, focusing resources on Whitmore Incorporated's profitable core operations. Morale rebounded. Stock prices, after a slight dip, started rising. The media painted Samantha as the unsuspecting wife who had come to the rescue of a sinking ship, a modern-day heroine who had quietly outmaneuvered her unfaithful husband. Journalists clamored for interviews, praising her intelligence and grace under pressure. She remained discreet, granting only a handful of carefully managed statements. Throughout this ordeal, one thing was certain. She was doing it all for her child, who deserved a secure future and a father who would one day regret his mistakes. One late afternoon, about a month after the board upheaval, Samantha was working in her new office, the large corner suite once occupied by Andrew. It felt surreal. She glanced up from her paperwork as her assistant buzzed in. "Mrs. Whitmore, your husband is here to see you. Shall I send him away?" Samantha drew a steadying breath. "No. Let him in." Moments later, Andrew stepped in. He looked haggard, as though he had aged years in a matter of weeks. The arrogance that once defined him had evaporated. A sense of desperation clung to him, visible in the hollows under his eyes. "Samantha," he said, voice cracking. He glanced at her pregnant belly. "We need to talk." She gestured for him to sit, though she remained standing behind the desk. "I have a few minutes." "What is it?" He sank into the chair, his eyes flickering around the room he once controlled. I'm sorry," he began, words tumbling out in a rush. "I don't know what came over me. It's been a nightmare, losing the company, the investigation." She exhaled slowly. "I'm sure it has been difficult." He rubbed his forehead. "Nicole's gone. She left the city, probably once she realized the money wasn't coming as easily anymore. She never cared about me. I was a fool." Samantha allowed a moment of silence, letting him feel the weight of his actions. "I tried to tell you. You refused to listen." He nodded miserably. "I know. I got caught up in the excitement, in the ambition. I wanted to be the biggest name in tech, to overshadow everyone else. And Nicole seemed like the perfect partner. She flattered me, made me feel unstoppable. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you and risking everything." His eyes moistened. "Samantha, I know I have no right to ask this, but can you forgive me? Can we try to fix things?" She gazed at him, memory flooding back. The sweet college boy who brought her coffee, the man who proposed under a canopy of fairy lights in Tuscany, the would-be father of her child. She could see glimpses of that Andrew in the man before her, but also recognized how deeply he had betrayed her. "I can't just pretend nothing happened," she said quietly. "You humiliated me, mocked me in front of your mistress, funneled company money to pay for her lifestyle, and risked the future of our family. Trust isn't something I can hand back easily." Andrew's lips trembled. "I understand," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." They sat in heavy silence. Then Samantha finally spoke, voice subdued but resolute. "I'm not sure what the future holds for us, Andrew. Right now, my priority is our child. I will not keep you from the baby, but I need to see real change if there's going to be any chance of reconciliation." He nodded, blinking back tears. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, stepping away from the business, anything. Samantha offered a faint, sad smile. We'll see. For now, I think it's best if we live separately. I need time to focus on my well-being and the babies. Andrew rose to leave, pausing by the door. I still love you, he said hoarsely. I hope one day you believe that again. Samantha remained silent, her heart burdened by conflicting emotions. She watched him go, the door closing softly behind him. In the weeks and months that followed, Samantha continued to refine the direction of Whitmore Incorporated with the help of the board. Though the stress was immense, she found renewed purpose in her work and discovered an inner strength she never realized she possessed. Beyond the office, she attended prenatal yoga classes, found solace in journaling her emotions, and stayed in touch with Juliet, who was her biggest cheerleader. Her baby bump grew steadily, and with every flutter and kick, Samantha felt a surge of joy. She was creating a new life, forging a future that would be bright and stable, free from the toxic chaos Andrew had brought upon them. Eventually, the board offered her the permanent CEO position. While flattered, she politely declined, explaining that her passion lay in writing and philanthropic endeavors. She was merely stepping up to steward the company during a critical transition. Instead, she worked with Camilla Royce to identify a capable successor from within the company's talent pool, someone who shared her commitment to responsible growth. By the time Samantha gave birth to a healthy baby boy, whom she named Alexander, Whitmore Incorporated had stabilized, with the scandal largely faded from the headlines. Samantha stepped down from day-to-day management, retaining her significant shareholding, ensuring that her voice and vision remained integral to the company's long-term strategy. Andrew, for his part, sought redemption. He visited Samantha often, bringing thoughtful gifts for the baby, attending parenting classes, and seeking therapy to address his hubris and misguided ambitions. He was far from perfect, and trust did not instantly return. But Samantha could see he was making an earnest effort, one driven not by showmanship, but by genuine remorse. Slowly, Samantha allowed herself to consider the possibility of healing. She agreed to couples therapy, acknowledging that while she remained deeply hurt, she also recognized the bond they once shared. Whether their future was as co-parents or as husband and wife again, she would only move forward at a pace that preserved her dignity and her child's well-being. Almost a year after the dramatic board meeting, Samantha was in her study, working on a memoir she had tentatively titled From Mockery to Mastery, a journey of motherhood and corporate upheaval. She had found solace in writing once more, this time weaving together her personal story of heartbreak, betrayal, and triumph for others who might find themselves similarly cornered. Her phone buzzed. It was a notification about a new business article. Whitmore Incorporated's turnaround. How the wife of its founders saved the company from disaster. She read the piece with a bittersweet smile. It praised her for stepping up, for having the courage to challenge a man who once seemed unstoppable. There was even a quote from Bill Gates himself, praising corporate responsibility and referencing Samantha's example of moral leadership. Setting down her phone, she picked up her sleeping son, Alexander, who stirred softly in the bassinet by her desk. She cradled him, heart swelling with love. This child was her future. She whispered gently, "You'll never remember this chaos, my little one. But maybe one day you'll learn from it. Learn that life has a funny way of testing us, challenging us to be stronger, kinder, and more open to unexpected transformations." Andrew's story was not fully written yet. There was a possibility of genuine reform, of a father who might learn from his mistakes to become a better man. Or he might not, in which case Samantha was prepared to move on with her life, secure in her independence and the knowledge that she had orchestrated the greatest shift of power in her own life story. For Samantha, the message was clear. Resilience could sprout from the ashes of betrayal. Authentic connection, whether in business or love, thrived only when nurtured by mutual respect and trust. And ambition, when untethered from morality, could lead to downfall. But when guided by compassion, it could create a legacy worth remembering. Thus, the once mocked wife, pregnant and humiliated, had proven to everyone that she was more than just a trophy or a helpless romantic. She was the woman who quietly bought her husband's company out from under him, righted its course, and emerged a beacon of strength. The transformation had not been without heartache or sacrifice, but in the end, Samantha discovered that authentic power was not about controlling others. It was about controlling one's own destiny and never letting anyone else diminish the light you carry within. And in that realization lay the true happy ending. Samantha had found her voice, her purpose, and her capacity to love herself and her child fiercely, and perhaps one day to love Andrew again if he truly earned it. No matter what the future held, she would never again be the wife who stood quietly in the shadows. She was the force that would shape her own life story, one graceful, resolute step at a time.
The flashbulbs were a porcelain lie, freezing everyone in false perfection. Inside the grand hall of the New York Public Library, Amelia Hayes Thorne held her breath, a familiar performance. At 7 months pregnant, the custom-made silk gown felt like beautiful armor. Her husband, Marcus Thorne, was a gravitational force, pulling all eyes. He was donating a new wing, another monument to his name. Amelia smiled, one hand on her stomach, feeling the gentle kick of her daughter. But as Marcus's hand rested on her back, his eyes were already scanning, not for her, but for the next opportunity. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to know. And if powerful stories move you, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. Let's dive in. The Thorne Legacy Foundation Gala was the apex of the New York social season. It was an event Amelia herself had orchestrated, a perfect blend of old-world philanthropy and new-world power. The library's Astor Hall was transformed, bathed in deep blues and golds. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and the murmur of 1,000 conversations, each one a transaction, veiled in politeness. Amelia was the perfect host. She navigated the sea of venture capitalists, aging aristocrats, and ambitious politicians with a grace that was both innate and meticulously practiced. She came from quiet academia. Her family's name, Hayes, was synonymous with professorships and dusty libraries, not skyscrapers and hostile takeovers. Marrying Marcus had been like stepping from a rowboat into a typhoon. "Amelia, darling, you look radiant," a congresswoman gushed, her eyes flicking to Amelia's prominent stomach. "Legacy in every sense." "Thank you, Senator," Amelia murmured, her smile never faltering. "We're just so thrilled to be supporting the city's literacy programs." Marcus found her by the silent auction, his 6'4" frame parting the crowd. He was electric, his dark hair perfectly styled, his tuxedo impossibly sharp. He didn't just wear the suit, he commanded it. "Everything on schedule?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. It wasn't a question, it was a check-in. "Of course, Marcus. The mayor is seated, and the press corps is in place." "Good." He kissed her forehead, a gesture that looked intimate to the cameras but felt like a brand. His hand lingered on her back, a proprietary weight. Time for the main event. He led her to the head table, set on a dais overlooking the hall. As he ascended the steps to the podium, a hush fell. The lights dimmed, save for a single, brilliant spotlight that found him. "Thank you," he began, his voice resonant, filling the cavernous space. "We are here tonight not just to celebrate history, but to make it." Amelia watched him, a familiar, dull ache in her chest. She had loved him once. She had believed in the charming, brilliant man who had pursued her, who had claimed to be dazzled by her quiet integrity. Now she knew she was just another asset, the most valuable one, the one that gave his shark's tooth reputation a veneer of class. He was deep into his speech about building bridges to the future when a figure emerged from the shadows near the side stage. A woman. Impossibly beautiful, in a crimson dress that clung to her like a second skin. She was not on any guest list Amelia had approved. She moved with a panther's confidence, walking directly toward the podium. Security, so used to the placid flow of the gala, reacted a half-second too late. "Marcus," the woman's voice was clear, cutting through the silence. Marcus froze. The well-practiced rhythm of his speech shattered. He turned, his face a mask of confusion. Then, recognition. A flicker of sheer panic. "Sienna," he breathed, the microphone catching the name. The woman, Sienna, didn't stop. She reached the podium, took one look at the stunned audience, and then turned back to Marcus. With a predatory grace, she cupped his face in her hands and kissed him. It wasn't a peck. It was a deep, violating kiss. A claim. The room audibly gasped. The thwack, thwack, thwack of paparazzi cameras exploded, a volley of flashbulbs illuminating the scene in grotesque, repeating detail. Marcus finally shoved her away. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed, his face pale with fury. Sienna Jensen just smiled, her red lipstick immaculate. "Just claiming what's mine, darling." Every single eye in the room, over 500 of them, swiveled from the stage, past the Mistress, past the Billionaire, and settled, with agonizing, hungry pity, on the pregnant wife. Amelia felt the world tilt. The blood rushed from her head, leaving a cold, metallic ringing in her ears. The baby gave a sharp, painful kick, as if sensing the impact. She could faint, she could scream, she could run. Those were the expected moves. Marcus was already turning to her, his hand outstretched, his face a mask of, "Let's manage this." "Amelia." She looked at him. She saw the lie, the carelessness, the utter disrespect. She looked at the woman, Sienna, who was watching her with a strange, triumphant defiance. And then, Amelia Hayes Thorne did the one thing no one could have predicted. She stood. Slowly, deliberately. She placed one hand on her stomach, a gesture of both protection and strength. She didn't look at her husband. She didn't look at the woman. She walked, with the straight-backed poise of her ancestors, right past them, to the main podium. The cameras followed her, the flashes unceasing. Marcus and Sienna were forgotten. Two actors left on a dark stage. Amelia tapped the microphone. The sharp thump silenced the remaining whispers. Her voice, when it came, was not a shout. It was not a sob. It was clear, calm, and cut like a scalpel. "Good evening," she said, her eyes sweeping the stunned crowd. "My husband, Marcus, has just given a very passionate display." A few nervous, choked laughs died instantly. "It proves," she continued, "what we at the Foundation have always known. That art, and indeed life, should be about passion, about what you are willing to risk for what you believe in." She paused, and for the first time, her gaze settled on Sienna. "But passion without integrity is just vandalism." She let the words hang. She could see Sienna's smirk falter. Then, Amelia turned her gaze to the press row. "Which is why I am so pleased to announce a change to tonight's program. Effective immediately, I am redirecting my entire personal contribution and the Hayes family trust from the Thorne wing." A new, more profound gasp filled the hall. She saw Marcus's face go from pale to ashen. This was not part of the PR spin. "To a new fund," Amelia concluded, her voice ringing with an authority she hadn't realized she possessed. "A fund to be managed solely by me. A fund dedicated to supporting displaced female artists and creators who have been silenced." She smiled, a small, tight, brilliant smile. "We're calling it, simply, the Hayes Foundation." "Thank you." She set the microphone down. She didn't look back. As security finally, belatedly, swarmed the stage, Amelia Hayesthorne walked, head held high, out of the grand hall, leaving her husband, his mistress, and the entire city utterly and completely speechless. The silence in the back of the Maybach was a living thing, heavy and cold. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, streaks of neon painting a mockery of the chaos that had just unfolded. Marcus hadn't spoken since they'd pushed through the frantic press scrum and into the sanctuary of the car. Amelia's driver, a stoic man named Thomas, navigated the streets with his eyes fixed forward, the privacy partition mercifully raised. Amelia stared at her own reflection in the dark glass. The woman looking back was a stranger, pale, pupils dilated, but with a terrifyingly calm set to her jaw. The adrenaline was afire in her veins, holding the inevitable, crushing weight of the betrayal at bay. The elevator ride to their penthouse, a glass and steel box on the 78th floor overlooking Central Park, was just as silent. The ding as they arrived at their private landing was offensively loud. The moment the heavy oak door clicked shut behind them, the dam broke. "What?" Marcus snarled, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "In the hell did you think you were doing?" He wasn't apologetic. He wasn't ashamed. He was furious. Amelia turned to face him. She methodically placed her small clutch on the marble console table. "I believe I was clear. I was announcing a new charitable fund. You undermined me." He ripped his bow tie off, throwing it on the floor. "You stood on my stage, in front of my donors, and you publicly castrated me." "You were publicly occupied," Amelia said, her voice still holding that unnatural, icy calm. "I merely filled the silence. That woman, that Sienna, was a crazed stalker, a lunatic. We will have the PR team release a statement in the morning. We'll have a restraining order by noon." Amelia unzipped the back of her gown, letting the silk pool around her ankles. She stood in her simple slip, the swell of her pregnancy, the only curve on her otherwise angular frame. Was she Marcus? Was she a stalker? Or was she just sloppy? Her name was on your private calendar for SJ every Tuesday and Thursday for the last 6 months. I assumed it was a sports trainer. My mistake. The blood drained from his face. The narcissistic rage was replaced by a cold, appraising flicker. He had underestimated her. "You've been checking my calendar?" "I've been running your foundation, Marcus. Your entire life is on my calendar." She walked past him, toward their bedroom wing. "You should have been more careful." "Amelia, stop." He grabbed her arm. His grip was steel. "The Hayes Foundation. That was a joke, a slip of the tongue from a hormonal, humiliated wife. You will reverse it." She looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up to his eyes. "Take your hand off me." He tightened his grip. "You will reverse it. That money is my money. It's Thorne money." "Actually," she said, not flinching, "it's not. It's from my mother's trust, the one that vests on my 30th birthday, which was last month. You'd know that if you'd ever bothered to read the prenup. Your battalion of lawyers was so keen for me to sign." He released her arm as if she'd burned him. The power dynamic, for the first time in their entire relationship, had just visibly shifted. "You will not do this," he said. But it was no longer a command. It was a plea, laced with venom. "Think of the child, Amelia. Our child. Do you want it born into a scandal?" "It's a little late for that, wouldn't you say?" She turned and walked away, locking herself not in their shared bedroom, but in the guest suite, the one with the less impressive view. Only when the heavy door was bolted did her legs give out. She slid down the door, her hands flying to her stomach as the first, ragged sob tore through her. The adrenaline fled, leaving behind a raw, gaping void. The betrayal wasn't just the kiss, it wasn't just the affair. It was the realization that the last 5 years of her life had been a performance for an audience of one, and he had never even been watching. She saw it all now, the chance meeting at the university library where her family's endowment was struggling. He'd been planning a takeover. The charming courtship, a calculated acquisition, the red flags she'd painted white. He hadn't just married her, he had leveraged her. She cried for the naive girl she had been. She cried for the life she had thought she was building. And she cried for the tiny, innocent baby inside her, who was now her only true ally in a war she had just declared. The gilded cage had never felt so cold, but as she sat on the floor, the first glimmers of a new, terrifying resolve began to form. He thought this was about humiliation. He thought she'd be bought off, managed, or shamed into submission. He was wrong. She had spent 5 years learning from the master. She knew how he thought, how he operated. He had just taught her to be ruthless. She picked up her phone. It was 3 a.m. She dialed. "Rebecca, I'm sorry to wake you. Yes, I'm fine. No, actually, I'm not. I need you to file, yes, the divorce. But not just that. I need you to hire a forensic accountant, the best one you can find. Yes, I think my husband is stealing from our foundation." 2 days later, New York was still feasting on the scandal. The Post had run the headline, "Thorn in his side," with the now infamous photo of the kiss splashed across the front page. Marcus's PR team was in overdrive, painting Sienna Jensen as an unstable former intern. They painted Amelia as the stoic, forgiving wife, a victim of a mad woman's fantasy. The narrative almost worked. Almost. Amelia was not in their penthouse. She had moved into the Stanhope Hotel, a quiet, discreet establishment on the Upper East Side, under her maiden name. From this sterile, beige command center, she began to move her pieces. Her lawyer, Rebecca Dunn, was a shark in a Chanel suit, and the forensic accountant she'd hired, a man named Mr. Karras, was a bloodhound. "He's sloppy," Karras reported on the second day, his voice a gravelly monotone over the phone. "He's arrogant. He's been moving foundation money through a series of shell LLCs, small amounts at first, to art acquisition firms, but the firms are all registered to the same P.O. box in the Cayman Islands." "Can you prove it?" Amelia asked, pacing the suite. "Give me another week." But the SEC was only one half of the puzzle. The other half was Sienna Jensen. The PR team had done too good a job. Sienna had been fired from her paralegal job. Her landlord was trying to evict her. She had, in effect, been vaporized. "I need to find her," Amelia told Rebecca. "Absolutely not," Rebecca shot back. "She's toxic. You're the victim. Let her be the villain. That's the narrative we want." "I don't care about the narrative, Rebecca. I care about the truth. Why would she do that? Why then? Why in front of me?" Against her lawyer's advice, Amelia hired a private investigator, not one of Marcus's high-priced firms, but a quiet ex-NYPD detective named Costello. Costello found her in 3 hours. "She's not in a penthouse, Ms. Hayes. She's in a 5th-floor walk-up in Astoria, Queens, and she looks like she's packing." Amelia took a car service. No driver, no security. Just her, in a pair of maternity jeans and a simple black sweater, her hair in a ponytail. She looked like any other pregnant woman, not the eye of a financial and social hurricane. She climbed the 5 flights of stairs, her breath catching. She knocked on apartment 5B. The door opened a crack. Sienna Jensen peered out. The glamorous vixen from the gala was gone. In her place was a tired-looking woman in her late 20s, her hair in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing a faded NYU sweatshirt, When she saw Amelia, her eyes widened, first in fear, then in a defiant, weary anger. "Come to finish the job, or to have your husband's security throw me off the roof?" "May I come in?" Amelia asked, her voice quiet. Sienna stared at her. Then, with a sigh of defeat, she opened the door. The apartment was sparse, filled with packed boxes. "What do you want?" Sienna said, crossing her arms. "I want to know why," Amelia said. "Why would you do that? You destroyed your life for a 5-second kiss." Sienna let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "My life? My life was destroyed 20 years ago by him." Amelia frowned. "By Marcus? By Marcus Thorne?" Sienna's eyes flashed with a sudden, hot fire. "My name isn't Jensen, it's Gallic. My father was Robert Gallic. Does that name mean anything to you?" Amelia's blood went cold. Robert Gallic. She'd seen the name in the Foundation's original charter. He was Marcus's first business partner, the co-founder of Thorne Gallic Industries. The co-founder, Marcus, systematically bankrupted, slandered, and drove to suicide. The man he bought out, for pennies on the dollar, after my father hung himself in our garage. I was 8 years old. The room spun. Amelia sat down hard on one of the packed boxes. "I've spent my entire adult life working to get close to him," Sienna whispered, the anger replaced by a deep, generational pain. "I went to law school. I got a job at a firm that did consulting for him. I let him notice me. I became his mistress. I thought it was the only way to get inside." "Inside what?" Amelia asked. "His records. I was looking for the proof. The original fraudulent contract he used to steal my father's company. I've been feeding information to an investigative reporter at the Times for months." "But the kiss? Why?" Sienna's face crumpled. That was a mistake. That was stupid. He was ending it. He told me he was cleaning house because his wife was pregnant and he was building a real legacy. He was going to transfer me, cut off my access. I panicked. I thought if I made a public scene, if I blew it all up, his other enemies would come out. The reporter would have to publish. I thought he'd be ruined." She looked at Amelia, tears welling in her eyes. "I saw the articles about you. The society wife. The ice queen. I honestly didn't think about you. The pregnancy. I saw you at that table, and I just saw another one of his possessions. And I'm so sorry. I just made him a victim. I made you the victim. And I'm the monster." Amelia was silent for a long time. The story was monstrous, but it was true. It rang with the same cold, sociopathic logic she was beginning to recognize in her husband. "He told me you two had an arrangement," Sienna finally choked out, "that you were fine with his extracurriculars as long as he was discreet." "He told me you were a stalker," Amelia replied, her voice flat. "He uses us both, Sienna. You for revenge, me for a shield." Amelia stood up, her mind whirring. This changed everything. "The reporter," Amelia said. "What did you give them?" "Memos, emails, nothing admissible, nothing he can't spin. The real proof, the ledger, he keeps it locked away. A hard drive. He told me once when he was drunk. 'My whole life is on it,' he said. My real one." "Where?" "I don't know. In his office, in the penthouse, somewhere, safe." Amelia looked at the packed boxes. "He's not just a cheat, Sienna. He's a fraud. He's been stealing from the Foundation. My Foundation." Sienna's eyes widened. "So, the speech, that was real?" "It's about to be." Amelia pulled out her phone. "You're not going anywhere. Unpack your bags. You're going to come and stay at my hotel." What? Why? I'm your husband's mistress. No, you're the daughter of his first victim, and I'm his last. Amelia's voice was grim. He's not just going to go down for adultery, Sienna. We're going to take everything. It wasn't an alliance. It wasn't friendship. It was a battlefield promotion. Two soldiers on opposite sides of a war who suddenly realized they had the same enemy. The atmosphere in Rebecca Dunn's conference room was electric with controlled fury. The room, all glass and pale wood, overlooked the financial district, a stark reminder of the world they were about to attack. Amelia sat at the head of the table. On her right was Rebecca. On her left, Mr. Karras, the accountant. And in the chair by the door, nursing a cup of coffee, sat a very nervous Sienna Gallic. "Let's summarize," Rebecca said, clicking a pen. "Mr. Karras, you've confirmed that Marcus Thorne has been using the Thorne Legacy Foundation as his personal piggy bank, correct?" "That's a polite way of putting it," Karras grunted. He slapped a thick binder on the table. "He's siphoned $4.2 million over the last 2 years, funneled through shell companies, all owned by him, under the guise of art restoration and acquisition. He's been buying art for his own penthouse, for his office, even for his jet, and writing it off as a foundation expense. It's fraud. Plain and simple. The IRS would have a field day." "And Ms. Gallic," Rebecca continued, her gaze softening only slightly, "you allege a much older, deeper fraud. The theft of Gallic Industries." "I don't allege it," Sienna said, her voice stronger than it had been in her apartment. "He did it. He used a false debt instrument to trigger a buyout clause. My father's signature was forged. I've spent my life studying his handwriting. I know it." "The problem," Rebecca said, "is that one is a new, provable crime. The other is a 20-year-old cold case. The statute of limitations is long past. We can't prosecute him for what he did to your father, Sienna, but we can use it." "Use it how?" Amelia asked. "As narrative, as leverage. The SEC will freeze his assets for the foundation fraud. The Southern District of New York will indict him. But when this goes public, we leak the Gallic story. We show a pattern of behavior. It won't just be a white-collar crime. It will be the story of a sociopath who destroys families. Yours, Sienna, and yours, Amelia." Amelia's stomach tightened. This was no longer just a divorce. It was a demolition. The door to the conference room opened, and Rebecca's assistant leaned in. "Ms. Hayes? I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Thorne is on the line. He says it's urgent." Amelia's blood ran cold. She hadn't spoken to him since the night of the gala. He had been served the divorce papers at his office, and she'd been deflecting his calls, his texts, his flowers. "Put him on speaker," Amelia said. The line clicked. "Amelia." Marcus's voice filled the room, and she was disgusted by the familiar, intimate rumble. "Amelia, thank God. Darling, I know you're upset. I know I've been a fool." Sienna flinched at the word, darling. "What do you want, Marcus?" Amelia kept her voice flat. "I want you to come home. This is madness. Divorce, lawyers. You're pregnant, Amelia. You're emotional. You're not thinking clearly. These vultures," a pointed jab at Rebecca, "are taking advantage of you." It was the classic gaslight. She was emotional. She was not thinking. "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in 5 years," she said. "Are you? Are you thinking about our child? I've fixed it. The Sienna woman. I've had my team. She's been handled. She's gone. She won't bother us again." Sienna's head snapped up, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and fury. "It's just us now, Amelia," Marcus purred. "You and me, and the baby. Come home. We'll take a trip. We'll go to St. Bart's. Just call off your lawyers. This is a private matter. We can settle this between us." Amelia looked at Rebecca, who simply raised an eyebrow. She looked at Sienna, who was vibrating with rage. She looked at the binder. "He's feeling the pressure," Mr. Karras whispered. "The accountant must have noticed my inquiries. He's trying to shut it down before the walls cave in." "I'll think about it," Amelia said into the phone. "Think about it?" Marcus's voice hardened. The charm was gone. "There's nothing to think about. You are my wife. You will come home, or I will freeze every account you have. The Hayes Trust, your mother's money. It's all tied up in Thorn Holdings. You signed the papers. You thought you were so clever with that prenup? I'm the executor. You won't be able to buy a cup of coffee without my permission." The threat hung in the air, brutal and absolute. He had her. He'd used their marriage to swallow her family's legacy whole. "You're a monster," Amelia whispered. "I'm a businessman," he retorted. "And you, my love, are a very, very poorly managed asset. Come home. We'll have dinner. We'll reconcile. Tonight. 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. tomorrow. You're penniless. Your choice." He hung up. The room was silent. Amelia felt the air leave her lungs. He'd had this contingency all along. He had planned for her to leave, and he had built a cage to pull her right back in. "Well," Rebecca said, snapping her pen. "That clarifies things. He's not just a cheat. He's not just a fraud. He's a blackmailer." "He's right," Amelia said, the fight draining out of her. "I'm trapped. That prenup. He said it was to protect me." "It doesn't matter," Sienna said, standing up. Her voice was shaking, but her eyes were firm. "He's a fool. He's a narcissist. He just told us his weakness." "He just told us he has no weakness," Amelia said. "No. He told you to come home," Sienna said, a dangerous, brilliant idea forming on her face. "He wants you back in that penthouse. He's arrogant. He thinks he can charm you or bully you into submission. And he just invited you into the one place on earth that holds the final piece of the puzzle." Sienna looked at Amelia. "He mentioned a hard drive once, when he was drunk. My whole life, he called it. My real one. He keeps it in a safe, behind a painting in his study. A terrible Rothko knockoff." Amelia's head snapped up. "You're going to go to that dinner, Amelia," Sienna said. "You're going to play the broken, penitent wife. And while he's pouring himself a victory scotch, you are going to walk into that study, open that safe, and you are going to take the hard drive." "And how?" Amelia asked, her heart hammering. "Am I supposed to know the combination to his private safe?" Sienna smiled, a grim, painful smile. "Because he's a creature of habit, a creature of ego. It's the same code he uses for everything. His phone, his private jet, his intern's NDA. It's the date he closed the Gallic deal, the day he officially became a billionaire." "Otter 19 to 2001, Amelia whispered. She'd seen the date on the original charter. "Go to dinner, Amelia," Rebecca said, her voice low and steady. "Get the drive. That's the house of cards. That's the one that brings it all down." The penthouse was a stage set for a reconciliation that would never happen. Marcus had pulled out all the stops. Soft jazz played. The lights were dimmed to a warm, forgiving glow. The scent of Amelia's favorite flowers, white peonies, filled the air. A cloying, funereal smell. A private chef was at work in the kitchen. Marcus greeted her at the elevator, his face a perfect mask of contrition. He was wearing a cashmere sweater, his at-home costume. "Amelia, darling, I knew you'd see reason." He reached to embrace her, to touch her stomach. She sidestepped him, a small, elegant move. "I'm here, Marcus. Let's not pretend. His smile faltered, but he recovered. Of course, you're right. No pretense. Just honesty. A new start. He poured her a glass of sparkling cider. To us. To the family. She accepted the glass, her hand steady. Her heart felt like a trapped bird against her ribs. In her small, discreet handbag was a small, discreet digital recorder. Rebecca's idea. The dinner was torture. He was charming, attentive. He talked about the baby's room. He talked about his regret. He was spinning a new narrative, one where Sienna was a momentary, meaningless diversion. And Amelia's stunt at the gala was a cry for help that he, as a loving husband, had finally heard. "I've been absent, I know," he said, reaching for her hand across the table. This brush with disaster. It's woken me up. It's you, Amelia. It's always been you. The lies were so smooth, so practiced, she could almost believe them. This was how he'd trapped her in the first place. She played her part, the wary, wounded wife. "I don't know, Marcus. You've broken something. I don't know if it can be fixed." "Anything can be fixed," he said, his eyes intense. "Give me time. Give us time." I feel faint," she said, pressing a hand to her temple. It wasn't entirely a lie. The stress, the pregnancy, the sheer toxicity of the room was suffocating. "My prenatals. I think I left them in the study." "I'll get them," he said, rising. "No," she said, a little too quickly. "Please, I need a minute to breathe. I'll get them." He watched her, his eyes appraising. She was, after all, his pregnant wife. He was playing the doting husband. He couldn't very well deny her. "Of course, darling, take your time." He settled back in his chair, a smug, patient look on his face. He'd won. She was back in his house. The rest was just negotiation. Amelia walked down the long marble hall. Her footsteps were silent. She entered his study. The room was dark, panelled in mahogany. The terrible Rothko knockoff, as Sienna had called it, hung over the fireplace. Her hands were shaking. She lifted the painting. It was lighter than she expected. Behind it, as promised, was a biometric safe, fingerprint, and a keypad. Her heart sank. He'd upgraded. She heard his phone ring in the dining room, his voice a low murmur. He was taking a call. She had seconds. She pressed her thumb to the scanner, knowing it would fail. Access denied. But she'd watched him. She'd studied him. He was arrogant. He wouldn't just use his print. He was the king. Who else would be in his inner sanctum? She pressed her thumb to the scanner. Access granted. The safe clicked open. She almost fainted in relief. He had added her print when they were first married, a gesture of total trust, to show her he had no secrets. He'd been so sure of her, so sure of his control, he'd never even thought to remove it. Inside was a stack of bearer bonds, a few passports, and a single, black, external hard drive. She grabbed the drive. She slipped it into her handbag. She closed the safe. She was fumbling with the heavy painting, trying to get it straight, when his voice came from the doorway. "Feeling better?" She froze. He was standing there, silhouetted against the hall light. His phone was in his hand. "Yes, much," she said, her voice a strained whisper. I couldn't find my pills." "That's because they're in the kitchen, where they've always been." His voice was no longer soft. It was the voice from the boardroom, the voice that gave orders to fire entire departments. "What's in your handbag, Amelia?" My lipstick," she stammered. "You don't wear lipstick." He stepped into the room, flipping on the light. The warm, intimate study became a cold, sterile box. His eyes were not on her. They were on the painting, It was crooked. You called me, she said, her mind racing. You blackmailed me. You forced me to come here. And you came. He took a step toward her. You came so willingly, after fighting me for days. You, the brilliant, principled Amelia Hayes. You caved so fast. It made me suspicious. He took another step. So I had my tech team do a sweep. There's a recorder in your bag, isn't there? And you weren't looking for pills, were you? He was in front of her now, close enough for her to smell the expensive scotch on his breath. What's in the bag, Amelia? He snarled, and he grabbed it. She pulled back. The strap broke. The bag fell, contents spilling across the Persian rug. A compact, a wallet, a digital recorder, and a black hard drive. He stared at it. His face, for the first time, showed not anger, but genuine animalistic fear. He looked at her, and the last shred of the man she thought she knew vanished. His eyes were black. You stupid bitch! He lunged, not for the drive, but for her. He slapped her. The force of the blow was shocking. It snapped her head back, sent her stumbling. She fell hard against the edge of the mahogany desk, the corner jamming into her side. A sharp, searing pain shot through her abdomen, followed by a terrifying, warm gush down her legs. She gasped, looking down. The baby! Marcus froze. He looked at his hand. He looked at his wife, crumpled on the floor, her hands clutching her pregnant stomach. The horror of his own, final, irrevocable action dawned on his face. The elevator dinged in the foyer. Marcus didn't move. He was paralyzed. Rebecca Dunn walked into the study, flanked by two very large, very real security guards. She took in the scene in one sweeping glance. Amelia on the floor, the terrified, frozen Marcus, the hard drive. She didn't rush to Amelia. She pointed one perfectly manicured finger at the drive. Mr. Harris, secure the package. One guard scooped up the drive. Then she walked to Amelia. The second car is downstairs. We're going to Lenox Hill. Not here. Not on his territory. He hit me, Amelia whispered, the shock setting in. Rebecca? The baby. The baby will be fine, Rebecca said, her voice a steel girder. You're going to be fine. Her other guard helped Amelia to her feet. Marcus finally spoke, his voice a hoarse whisper. This is my home. You can't. Rebecca turned to him, her face a mask of utter contempt. You just assaulted your pregnant wife in front of two witnesses after she obtained evidence of your serial racketeering. You didn't just lose your wife, Mr. Thorne, you just lost your life. She nodded to the guards. Let's go. They moved Amelia out of the room, leaving Marcus Thorne alone in his study, with his crooked painting and his empty safe. The sterile white of the hospital room was a stark contrast to the opulent prison of the penthouse. Amelia was hooked up to a fetal monitor, the rhythmic, steady whoosh 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 of her daughter's heartbeat, the only sound in the room. You're lucky, the doctor had said. A partial placental abruption. Very dangerous. But you got here fast. The fall seems to have stabilized. We need to keep you here. Bed rest. No stress. No stress, Amelia had repeated, a hollow laugh catching in her throat. She had been at Lenox Hill for 36 hours. Rebecca had posted a new security team outside her door. They weren't to keep people out. They were to keep her in. The hard drive, Rebecca had informed her, was the Rosetta Stone of white-collar crime. It contained everything: the original Gallic contracts, the shell company ledgers, a secret bank account in Switzerland, and, most damning of all, audio files. Marcus, a true narcissist, had been recording his phone calls for posterity, calls with his lawyers, his bankers, and his political friends. The Southern District of New York had convened an emergency grand jury. On the morning of the third day, Amelia was watching the local news when the story broke. Not on the gossip page, on the front page. Billionaire Marcus Thorne, head of the Thorne Legacy Foundation, was arrested at his home early this morning. They showed footage of a grim-faced Marcus in an impeccably tailored suit, being led from his penthouse in handcuffs. The report didn't mention an affair. It didn't mention the gala. It mentioned wire fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. A quiet knock came at her door. It wasn't a nurse. Sienna Gallic stood in the doorway, looking small and uncertain. "I saw the news. Rebecca told me what happened. Are you—" "We're fine," Amelia said, her hand resting on her stomach. "Both of us." Sienna walked in, holding a small, crumpled paper bag. I don't know why I'm here. I'm so sorry, Amelia. All of this. My father, he'd be ashamed. I wanted revenge. I never wanted this. He hit me, Sienna, Amelia said, her voice quiet. He would have done it, eventually. To me, to you, to anyone who got in his way. You just showed me the truth I wasn't ready to see. The U.S. Attorney's Office called me, Sienna said. They want me to testify about my father. They said the audio file from the hard drive. It has Marcus bragging about the forgery. They said, it's enough to reopen the case, even after all this time. They're adding it to the indictment. Are you going to do it? I have to, Sienna whispered. For him. For my father. And for you. She placed the paper bag on the nightstand. It's a bagel. From that place in Astoria you've probably never heard of. It's all I could think to do. Amelia looked at the bag, and then at the young woman who had, in her own misguided quest, inadvertently saved her. He used us both, Amelia said. He used your pain, and he used my name. Now, we use the truth. The next few weeks were a blur. Marcus was out on bail, a $5 million bond. His lawyers, a new, more criminal-focused team, were trying to spin the narrative. They claimed Amelia was an unstable, vindictive wife, that she had stolen the drive, that she had assaulted him. It didn't work. Rebecca released the audio file from Amelia's handbag, the one where he threatened to make her penniless. The woman-scorned narrative evaporated, replaced by the abused and blackmailed one. Marcus tried to see her. He sent flowers, he sent letters. His lawyers offered a settlement, a massive settlement. 50 million. 100 million. Just make this go away, the offer read. Amelia refused. This was no longer about money. It was about justice. It was about the name her daughter would carry. 3 weeks after the arrest, 2 weeks before the trial was set to begin, Amelia went into labor. It was fast, and it was frightening, but it was, for the first time in a year, something real. Rebecca was there, acting as her coach, shouting orders to the nurses as if they were junior associates, and at 4:17 a.m., Amelia Hayes gave birth to a healthy 6-pound, 2-ounce baby girl. She held her daughter, this tiny, perfect creature who had been with her through the fire, this little girl who had kicked her in warning at the gala, who had survived the fall. A nurse bustled in. And what's the name for the birth certificate, Ms. Hayes Thorne? Amelia looked at her daughter's perfect, sleeping face. The name is Rose, she said, her voice clear and strong. Rose Hayes. Just Hayes. 1 year later, a new gallery was opening in Chelsea. It wasn't a sterile, glass-box billionaire's wing. It was a reclaimed warehouse, all exposed brick, warm wood, and brilliant, cascading light. The sign over the door was simple. The Hayes Foundation. Inside, the opening night was packed, But the crowd was different. It wasn't the old money, transaction-focused crowd of the Met. It was artists in paint-splattered jeans, students, activists, and real, passionate collectors. The inaugural exhibition was titled simply Integrity, and it was a roaring success. Amelia Hayes, no thorn, stood near the entrance. She was holding her daughter Rose on her hip. The little girl, with a shock of dark, curly hair, was babbling, pointing at a striking 20-foot-tall metal sculpture. Amelia herself was transformed. The Ice Queen was gone. She was wearing a simple, elegant linen dress. Her hair was shorter, freer. She looked happy, not the brittle, on-camera, happy of her old life, but a deep, tired, and profoundly real happiness. The past year had been a trial by fire. Marcus had, in the end, taken a plea deal. Faced with the mountain of evidence and Sienna's damning emotional testimony, he had pleaded guilty to racketeering and fraud. The judge, a woman who had clearly read the papers, had been unmoved by his pleas for leniency. He was currently serving a 12-year sentence in a medium-security federal prison. His empire had been dismantled, his assets seized and liquidated to pay back his victims, starting with the Gallic family estate. Sienna Gallic had testified. She had been brilliant, heartbreaking, and precise. With the money from the liquidation, she had established the Robert Gallic Scholarship for Business Ethics at NYU. She was, Amelia had heard, in Chicago, applying to the Attorney General's office. A young reporter, a blogger from a small arts journal, approached Amelia. "Ms. Hayes, an incredible night, an incredible comeback." Amelia smiled, shifting Rose on her hip. "Thank you. We're very proud of the work. After everything, after the trial, the betrayal," the reporter fumbled. Do you regret it? Any of it?" Amelia was silent for a moment. She looked at the art, a vibrant, chaotic, and breathtakingly honest collection of pieces by women who had been told no one too many times. Then she looked at her daughter. "I regret not seeing the truth sooner," Amelia said, her voice clear. "I regret the time I lost. But regret is a luxury, and I'm not a very luxurious person anymore." She turned to the reporter, her eyes bright and steady. "We're all taught that legacy is something you're given, or something you buy, like a name on a building. But it's not. That's just branding." She kissed the top of Rose's head. "A real legacy is something you build. Brick by painful, honest brick. It's the work you do when no one is watching. It's the integrity you keep when it costs you everything." She smiled, a real smile, one that reached her eyes. "And I," she said, "am just getting started. What a journey." From the ultimate public betrayal to the ultimate private comeback, Amelia Hayes proved that the moments that leave you speechless don't have to be the end. They can be the beginning. She didn't just get even. She got free. What did you think of her incredible decision on that stage? And what about Sienna's shocking motive? Was she a villain, a victim, or both? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of resilience, redemption, and rebuilding, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this with a friend who needs a reminder of their own strength, and be sure to subscribe for more stories that hit you right in the heart. Thanks for watching.